Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Turlings from the Startup Buddy. I will further introduce myself very soon. But for now, I first want to introduce Sabine Poelmann from the Dutch Embassy to kick off the second day of the Digital Food Tech Mission 2020.
Hi everyone, thank you Robin, and welcome to the second day of our Food Tech Mission. I'm Sabine, the Agricultural Advisor at the Netherlands Embassy in Singapore. And together with my colleague Gabby, who is the Liaison Manager for Startups, we initiated this Food Tech Mission. Organizing missions is one of the things we do at the Embassy. The Dutch Embassy proactively assists and supports Dutch innovative companies that want to set up their business in Asia. This mission was aimed at strengthening the position of the Dutch food innovation ecosystem and providing insights into the opportunities that Singapore has to offer. 2 weeks ago, we had the official kickoff. We virtually introduced 10 amazing food tech startups from the Netherlands to Singapore. Local startups and government agencies introduced themselves and have shown the ambition that Singapore has in food innovation. The Dutch startups had the opportunity to introduce themselves to a wide audience during pitch sessions. It still amazes us every time how much creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship we have in the Netherlands, and we are very proud to be able to help companies like that here in Singapore. We are very much looking forward to today's sessions with, again, very interesting presentations from government agencies in Singapore, and we hope that fruitful conversations will lead to successful collaborations during our business partner matchmaking. On behalf of Gabby, I would like to thank our fantastic delegation, all of our speakers, and of course, Robin and his team for the amazing efforts that they have put into this mission. It would not have been a success without you. Robin, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sabine, for kicking off this second day of the Digital Food Tech Mission 2020. Like Sabine already introduced, my name is Robin. I'm the founder CEO of the Startup Buddy. We are based in Singapore and we're an online startup building and fundraising platform for startups. We help over 2,000 founders and 800 investors around the world build new companies and invest in those companies. And we do all of that online. On top of that, we also organize events like the one we're doing today, and we do regular speed dating sessions with investors. Sabine already thanked us. I will thank everybody very soon. But before I go do that, I'll first introduce what's going to happen today. So the program for today looks as follows. We just opened the session. And we have 4 very interesting speakers, which are very well informed about the food technology ecosystem here in Singapore. We first have Ms. Sufei from Enterprise Singapore. She's the Deputy Director for Food Manufacturing here. Then we have Mr. Daniel Tay, Deputy Director, Singapore Institute Food of Biotechnology and Innovation, also called A-STAR. Then we continue to Mr. Yeung. He's a scientist for the Singapore Food Agency, and he will be collaborating together with Mr. Teng Yong. If there's any questions, they can answer together. And last but not least, we have Mr. David To from SG Innovate, very similar to TechLeap in the Netherlands, who will share more about how the Singapore government invests in tech companies here in Singapore. The program has just started. We aim to finish around 4:45 Singapore time, which is, I think, 10:45 in the Netherlands. And then by 5 o'clock, we will continue with those who have registered for that with the business partner speed dating. If you have not yet registered for the business partner speed dating, you still can. Go to our website. I'll show it to you in a second when I'll also introduce all the Dutch startups. Let us know during the registration who you are, what your background is, and why you want to meet the Dutch startups. And then we will still make sure that you can join at 5 o'clock. Now, before we continue to the speakers, of course, I really want to thank Gabi and Sabine for giving us the opportunity to co-organize this. We've been working very intensively for the past, 8 weeks after we decided to start doing this in August. And I think it's gone really well. We have reached a lot of people, and I hope you're all going to have a very good day and learn a lot from all the speakers. Secondly, of course, all the companies that are participating from the Netherlands, there are 10 different top food technology companies from the Netherlands making sure that this mission is possible. Some of them are in 3D printing of food, others replace eggs with algae alternatives, and Meatable and most of meat, they make meat out of cells basically without using a cow or a pig. So very interesting technology what they use, and most of it is already on the market or very soon coming to market. If you want to talk to any of these companies, the URL where you can still register is at the bottom of my screen. So make sure to join that. Then finally, I will be the one that you see on your screen most of the time, but there are a couple of other people making sure that all of you know what to do today, which are my colleagues Darvis, Sakshi, and Harshit. They will be helping you. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and they will reach out to you and make sure that you can connect to now Zoom or AirMeet or anything else that you need help on. Okay, that was everything I was going to tell you, so don't worry. We're going to get to the really interesting people that actually know everything about food technology now. The first person to talk to you today is Ms. Lynn Sufei from Enterprise Singapore. Can you please start making sure that you can start sharing your screen? And in the meantime, I like to do a couple of polls all the time. And you should be able to see it right now already. So the question is, Robin, what kind of government support is most valuable for the food technologies sector to rapidly develop?
Robin, sorry, could I just trouble you to allow me to share screen?
Yes, I will do that, of course. You can now, right?
Can you see?
Looks good. So I'll just close off the poll. And I'm sharing the results now. According to the audience that we have, and it's a good audience, we're almost 50 people now. The most required support by the government is subsidies and grants. I'm not surprised. Maybe you can go into that, maybe not. But that's what the audience thinks for now. Ms. Lynn Sufei, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Sabine. Hi, everyone, and a very good morning to all our Dutch friends. I'm Sufei from Enterprise Singapore's food manufacturing team. It's my pleasure to join you today at the Digital Food Tech Mission to share with you about Enterprise Singapore's efforts in creating and driving a vibrant food innovation ecosystem in Singapore. So if I can just move on. Hang on. Sorry. Okay. So Enterprise Singapore, or ESG in short, is the enterprise development agency championing the growth of Singapore enterprises in capability development, trade, and internationalization. Our 4 key strategies are to drive enterprise transformation, strengthen Singapore as a global node for innovation and startups, develop Singapore as a top global trading hub, and to build trust in Singapore's products and services. And we do this not just from Singapore, but also through our network of 36 overseas offices around the world. And the Netherlands is actually covered by our Frankfurt office, which forms part of our European network. ESG is actually also part of a larger family under the Ministry of Trade and Industry that looks at growing Singapore's economy. So you can see on the slide that we have other sister agencies that we work very closely with, including the Economic Development Board, Agency for Science, Technology and Research, or A*STAR, and my colleague Daniel will be sharing more later. and also other agencies, for instance, the Singapore Food Agency, which we'll also be speaking later. So together, we collectively grow local food champions, develop collaborative landscape to cultivate disruptive technologies, and internationalize these novel products and solutions beyond Singapore. If I can zoom into Singapore's food manufacturing landscape, today we have over 900 enterprises in the space, and these enterprises span actually broadly 10 subsectors, including beverages, noodles, snacks, meat, seafood, many of whom actually include homegrown companies such as Yeung, which is actually a beverage company with a global footprint, as well as younger snacks players like Irvin's, which I'm sure if you visit Singapore, you might actually get to see. We actually export about 60% of our total output, with Asia as our key export market. So top export destinations actually include Australia, Japan, the Philippines, Thailand, and Malaysia. In the last couple of years, we have also seen a growing number of innovative food tech startups in the areas of alternative protein, functional foods and ingredients, as well as processing and extraction technologies. And they all add to the vibrancy of the food industry here. So actually, this just gives a snapshot of the diverse food manufacturing ecosystem we have in Singapore today. So apart from the companies I mentioned earlier, it's actually supported by adjacent industries such as flavors, ingredients, and food packaging companies. You can see that it's a mix of global as well as local players. Our food companies are also supported by a strong R&D ecosystem made up of our National Research Agency, A*STAR, and the various institutes of higher learning. So you can also see that in the past few years, we have also built up partners such as the accelerator partners, like the ones you see on the screen. They include Big Idea Ventures, Grow, Trendlines, as well as the agri-food tech startups. So I think if COVID has shown anything, it is that food security is paramount today. So given the heightened emphasis on food security globally, we need to accelerate the use of technology and innovation to scale up domestic food production capabilities and ensure that sources of food are sustainable. At the same time, while we are being challenged to produce more food for more people, this also means that there are massive opportunities arising from consumerism in Asia that we can work together to address. So in a world of disruptions and opportunities, our goal is to then position Singapore as a leading food and nutrition hub in Asia. With the vision to position Singapore as the leading hub, we believe that we can be the trendsetter in Asia and as well as a production capital. And this can be achieved through high-tech farming and innovative production methods. Actually, we share very similar or a lot of similarities with the Netherlands in terms of how you are trying to position yourselves as well in the area of food and food tech. So we see a lot of synergies to work together. So actually, with a vision to position Singapore as the leading food and nutrition hub, we launched the Food Innovate initiative in 2018. It was actually to equip companies with resources to create food for the future. So Food Innovate is actually a multi-agency initiative to equip companies with resources to create food for the future and position Singapore as a location of choice. There are 4 key strategies under the Food Innovate initiative, which I will go through in detail in the following slides. So our first strategy is to build a knowledge base to help our companies access markets in Asia and be on top of industry trends. For instance, we work with the Food Innovation Centre in Monash in Australia to help Singapore companies who are interested to enter the Australian market to learn more about the consumer demand and market trends there. At the same time, we also work closely with different partners, including Singapore Polytechnic's Food Innovation Resource Centre, as well as Mintel, to help our companies identify white space and therefore opportunities to tailor their products for different markets. The second strategy would be to drive co-innovation. So we create platforms for collaboration among food companies, research institutes, institutes of higher learning, and overseas food innovation clusters. For example, we lead various industry consortia to bring together companies, research institutes, and demand drivers to develop solutions under themes such as elderly nutrition and food waste upcycling or valorization. I believe there are some startups that are in this space that are interested in accessing the market from both Singapore and the Netherlands. The third strategy would be to cultivate disruptive technologies by developing a vibrant ecosystem to attract high potential startups like yours and groom local food tech startups with innovative products and solutions. We work with global partners to create platforms dedicated to regional food and agri-tech startups. For instance, last week, we had the Rethink Agri-Food Innovation Week. So we had the Rethink Agri-Food Innovation Week, which actually congregated many global players as well as local ones, which showcase some of our food tech startups as well. We also work with partners like the ones I mentioned earlier, including our accelerator partners like Big Idea Ventures, Grow, and the like, to grow a critical mass of agri-food tech startups that can offer innovative solutions to rising food demand. So you would have seen earlier on an earlier slide that today, actually, we have built up more than 80 companies in this space. And we look to actually grow this mass even further. And hopefully we will have some Dutch ones in the ecosystem soon. Our fourth strategy is actually to provide infrastructure to allow companies to test bed new ideas and technologies and accelerate commercialization rate of new products. So just to give some examples, we actually launched the first high pressure processing shared facility, or HPP in short, in partnership with a third-party logistics company in Singapore. So HPP, as you may be aware, allows companies to extend their product shelf life by at least 3 times while preserving the sensory and nutritional quality of the food products. So we did this because we acknowledge that it is very costly for companies to invest in such equipment. So by having these sorts of equipment available for shared use, it significantly allows the companies to be able to scale up quickly as well. Besides setting up new facilities, we also work with industry partners to create a network of shared infrastructure. So recently, for instance, there were collaborations with corporates such as the Royal DSM. They launched the Bright Science and Technology Innovation Hub in Singapore to actually support food companies to commercialize functional and plant-based food. So just a news flash, you can also look forward to another shared production facility coming up at the end of 2021, which is actually another shared production facility where companies can rent industrial scale equipment to produce small batches of food products for market testing. So these will have the necessary food processing licenses. And yeah, perhaps when we can receive the Dutch companies next year, physically, you can also visit these facilities then. So we just wanted to share on a more recent collaboration example where ESG partnered with Food Valley to launch a protein shift innovation scan. We did this with the aim of developing a deeper mutual understanding of each other's ecosystems to identify market opportunities, as well as to catalyze further exchanges and innovation partnerships between Dutch and Singapore institutions or businesses. The innovation scan covers a few areas, and these include alternative protein market insights, knowledge for providers and food innovators in the plant-based, cellular agriculture, fermentation, inside protein space, ecosystem partners that are supporting the growth of our startups, as well as the shared facilities and pilot plants that are available to help accelerate product innovations to meet consumer demand. So you may download a copy of the report. You can scan the QR code that's on the screen for more information. And we hope that this showcase actually will allow startups like yourselves to actually seek out new connections and new opportunities in and with Singapore. Before I end, I just wanted to highlight 4 collaboration areas that we believe that Singapore and the Netherlands could actually work together in. And they're not limited to these, but then we wanted to get a ball rolling on these fronts. So for number 1, we could work on R&D collaborations to advance food innovations. Number 2, product development to incorporate new ingredients into Asian food products. Number 3, manufacturing and pilot testing of out of Singapore for the Asian markets, to be closer to the Asian consumers, which maybe the Dutch companies may not be so familiar with, and co-branding and distribution collaborations to accelerate the commercial pathway to market. So these are some areas that we believe we could work together for a start, and we look forward to hearing from you. I do note from the poll earlier before the presentation that you would be keen to also learn about the grants that are available to the startups that are looking at the Singapore ecosystem. So a lot of our grants or financial support would actually involve companies having local shareholding here, but we'll be happy to take these questions offline later on. And in the meantime, please scan the code for more information on Food Innovate. So I thought I'll end off with a photo of the various cuisines that we have. This is not exhaustive. We do have a lot of other cuisines in Singapore, but this gives you a snapshot of how much we love food in Singapore. And that's why it makes sense to come to Singapore and see us as your Asian base to grow. So do get in touch with us if you would like to seek out new partnerships and collaborations, and we'll be happy to facilitate introductions within ESG or even to our partners in the ecosystem. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the discussion today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sufei. I think this is a perfect slide to finish with. It kind of summarizes Singapore in one slide, maybe. If anybody likes to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. The Dutch startups that are live on the panel, just unmute yourself and your video if you want to ask a question. We have time for 1 or 2 questions at the moment. I had one question. You mentioned Irvins earlier. For all the Dutch people on the call, you have no clue what that is, but it's basically an incredibly popular chips brand here in Singapore with all kind of local flavors. I was wondering, since Enterprise Singapore also helps companies to actually export and set up outside Singapore, have there been already examples or success stories from Singapore companies going, I don't know, abroad in Asia or maybe even further out that you are aware of?
So actually, I think on an earlier slide, I had mentioned that 60% of our output is actually exported in terms of food. So yes, as in like our companies do have a global footprint today. So if the Dutch companies are looking to scale from Singapore for the Asian markets, I think we will have partners for them to work with, either to scale and then access the Asian market, since these companies actually know these markets very well, and or other partners to adapt the product for Asia. Southeast Asia or China and the like.
Yeah, so it would basically be perfect to have your hub in Singapore and then from here expand to other places in Asia. Okay. I don't see any questions coming up yet. Okay, then in that case, I want to thank you very, very much for making the time to join the Digital Food Tech Mission for today. Please stay for the other speakers. I'm going to continue with the poll so that Mr. Daniel Tay can prepare for his presentation. So the next poll should show on your screen right now. And the question is, should food tech products fall in the healthier options marketing that is promoted in Singapore? Everybody who's been in a hawker center here probably is familiar with the sticker where you can choose your healthier options compared to not so healthy options. So should food technology products like the ones of the Dutch companies that are on this mission, should they fall in this category or not? It's going up and down a little bit, so I'm waiting till everybody has decided. Okay, so in general, the opinion is if the companies prove they are healthier, then yes. And second, if medical science says yes, of course, they are. I was expecting more people to say just point blank they're healthier, but we're not at that point that's a general opinion yet. We're just doing these polls in between, so the next speaker has a little bit of time to start sharing their screen. I'd like to introduce the next speaker, which is Mr. Daniel Tay. He is representing A-STAR, which stands for Agency for Science, Technology and Research. It's a little bit comparable, I think, with TNO in the Netherlands for all our Dutch participants. Mr. Daniel Tay, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Robin. Just let me try to share my screen.
Yeah.
Right. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, but I think it's work. No, we see you, but we don't see your screen yet.
Oh, that's not good. Right. I'm not sure why it's not working. Usually it works.
Well, that's why I have your deck for you if you want.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. Please guide me by saying click when you want me to click.
Sure. That will work for me as well. Right. Just so all right. Just let me get my stuff up. Okay, right. Thanks. So good morning, everybody. So I'm Daniel. So good morning to all the attendees from Europe, and then good afternoon to those in Singapore. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for this invitation to speak at this event. My name is Daniel. I head up the corporate strategy and business development team in A-Star's newest research institute, Sufei. So in the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'll share with you more about A-Star, Sufei, and some of our technologies, as well as our plans in the food innovation space. Next. So before I start, I thought it would be good to provide an overview of my organization, A-Star. So A-Star stands for the Agency for Science, Technology, and Research, and it's a government-funded research organization focusing on using innovation to catalyze economic growth and societal advancement. So within the organization, we have four different divisions: the Biomedical Research Council, the Science and Engineering Research Council. Together, they have 21 research institutes that straddle across both arms. We also have our commercialization arm, Accelerate. We look at IP filing, IP management, licensing, as well as catalyzing startup activities in the ecosystem. Lastly, we have our A-Star Graduate Academy, which is a unit that looks at identifying research talents at a pre-university stage and then nurturing them to spearhead Singapore's ambition to become a world-class scientific hub. We have about 5,000 staff altogether, and 80% of them are scientific staff, and they come from a wide diversity of different countries and culture. Next. Right. So before I start, I thought it would be good to show you some of the, so the slide didn't come out as well. So, as Singapore's lead agency for economic oriented R&D, we pride ourselves to working with the industry, and these are some of our achievements. From 2016 to 2019, these are data from then. We managed to catalyze about $1.2 billion of R&D spending through our work with industry partners. We conducted more than 6,000 projects, licensed about 1,000 IPs, and through this partnership with companies. Next. Right, so over the last few years, what we have done with some of our sister agencies like EDB and Enterprise Singapore was looking at how do we grow the innovation cluster in the food industry. Right, we started off by attracting some of the biggest, largest multinational companies in the food space like Nestle, Mondelez, Danone, and see here Ferrero. And this was followed up by quickly actively engaging and targeting the ingredient suppliers and some of the flavor and fragrance houses. So you see the like of ADM, Ingredient, Cargill, DSM, some of the top flavor houses like Givaudan, Firmenich, IFF, all of them conducting their research in a very tiny land space in Singapore. And more recently, we also see a lot of innovation startups like the one you see on the top right-hand diagram here. And I think we have catalyzed a mix of different multinational companies as well as local enterprises in growing and forming this vibrant innovation ecosystem. Next. So while we are doing this, the Singapore government has also announced last year its plans to support and build more capabilities in the food and agri-food space. As you can see here, the announcement was also backed by subsequent media reports emphasizing how serious Singapore is in terms of investing in this space. Next slide. So one of the motivation to do this, obviously, to build more capabilities to boost primary production in Singapore, food production in Singapore. As you may know or you may not know, Singapore imports more than 90% of its food. And obviously, it will be very difficult for us to be totally self-reliant on food. Hence, we have set the target to be at 30%, and that is to be 30% self-reliant by 2030. And many of you might have heard, this is what we call our 30 by 30 mission, right? So out of these 30%, we think we can derive 20% through fruits and vegetables, the rest of the 10% through increasing protein production in Singapore. From the protein landscape, we think 20% of them can come from alternative proteins. This could be plant proteins, microbial proteins, culture meat, etc. Next. So with this, we thought it was absolutely vital and it's the right timing for us to set up A-Star to establish the food and biotech centric institute to support the fast-growing food ecosystem as well as our 30 by 30 mission. Next. So earlier this year, A-Star established the Singapore Institute of Food and Biotechnology Innovation, and the institute focus is really to become a global leader in food and biotech innovation with the intent of driving economic and societal advancement in Singapore. So although the institute is very newly set up, the capabilities within it have been seeded as smaller programs in different parts of A-Star, and these programs have grown tremendously and matured over the years. Hence, I would say that this was more of a consolidation of capabilities across the food and biotech domain in A-Star. Next. So very briefly, some of the words can't be really seen properly, but this is how A-Star is being set up. There is the discovery division. That's the one that you see on the left-hand side. That looks at a new ingredient discovery. This could be small molecules, enzymes, microbial strains, protein, etc. And then following on, we have the strain engineering platform that looks at how do we design cellular systems to produce high value ingredients. We have the biotransformation team that looks at optimizing the fermentation, scaling up the processes. And then what distinguishes us from many research agencies is, I would say, our integrated capability. We have the ability to look at human safety as well as the nutrition aspect of these food ingredients. Last but not least, we are also in the process of building up a food processing engineering division that will explain more about this later on. So while all these are our core capabilities, in CP we will also focus on broadly 6 categories, 6 focus areas. These are, looking at using microbial strains for the bioproduction of high-value ingredients in food and nutrition. We focus on carbohydrate, protein, nutrition, and mainly focus on Asian consumers. We also look a lot on alternative proteins, side stream valorization. We look at the interaction between food, microbiome, and health, as well as food preservation. Due to the interest of time, I'll take the next 5 to 6 minutes to introduce some of our research platforms and some of the projects that we are working on these selected areas. Next. So first up, we have the Natural Product Library, one of the largest in the world, 123,000 microbes, 40,000 plants. We have derived crude extracts, fractionated extracts. We use this heavily with industry partners for the identification of new bioactive ingredients. These could be nutraceuticals, cosmetic products, and more recently, we're looking at natural preservatives and flavor compounds. Next. We also have a taste receptor platform that looks at discovering novel taste molecules, taste modulators. How this works is that we express human taste receptors on cell surfaces, and then we configure the cells to respond when an active molecule binds to it. And through this, we can screen for natural sweeteners, umami compounds, bitter compounds, cooling compounds, and so on, and in a high throughput fashion as well. Next. So this is our metabolic engineering platform and looks at how we can tune microorganisms to produce high value ingredients. These could be flavor fragrances, cosmetic ingredients, proteins, etc. And using an example here, we actually configure a cell, an E. coli, to grow on sugar to produce lycopene, which is the antioxidant compound that's produced in tomatoes in a very small amount. Using our approach with a 2,000-liter bioreactor, we are able to produce more lycopene than we are able to harvest from tomatoes that's planted across the whole of the Singapore land surface. It's a very efficient way of producing these high-value ingredients without being constrained to climate and geographical conditions. It's extremely efficient from a land and water usage point of view as well. Next. So lycopene is not the only molecule that we have conducted or produced a biosynthetic pathway for. We've done this for 40 over known molecules. Last year, we spun out a company, bringing 4 of these ingredients into the market. And besides that, besides bringing these IP in the market, more importantly, this spin-off company also acts as a co-manufacturer, not only for us, but also for our partners, for our research partners. We see this as an avenue for our research partners to translate the research they are conducted with us all the way from discovering, all the way from lab, all the way to manufacturing. Next. So in our fermentation division, we have a world-class competitive platform. We can do all the way from lab scale fermentation, all the way to pilot scale of 250 liters fermentation. We help industry optimize their fermentation processes, as well as look into the corresponding downstream processing work as well. Just featuring one of the work we do here with a Singapore-based company, Sufei Bionutrients, where we help them optimize the production of a macroalgae strain for alternative food products. Next. So just to touch briefly on our human safety platform, this is a platform that looks at identifying mechanisms for toxicity, building human organ models, looking at long-term exposure of novel ingredients to human, as well as looking at allergenicity of novel ingredients as well. Here, just featuring some of the work we are doing here with developing tools for regulators, as well as supporting industry in terms of getting access into the Singapore market. And here, example showing with Impossible Food how we help them to look at the allergenicity aspect of the proteins that's used in their product. Next. So in the nutrition arm of Sufei, this division looks at how we can integrate nutrition, sensory, food sciences to better diet-related chronic conditions such as diabetes and obesity. From a big picture perspective, this platform aims to use a very evidence-based approach to make food the new medicine, basically to understand how food could be used to minimize the development of chronic diseases as well as aid healthy aging. The platform has built deep capabilities in clinical nutrition, food structure engineering, looking at the impact of food structure on health, on food process engineering as well as things like sensory and ingestive behavior and how that actually influences the choices of food and how it ultimately impacts health. The group is also helping companies develop and formulate healthy variants of food products, also in the process of having some of those going into the commercial pipeline. Next. As I mentioned earlier, next. So as I mentioned earlier, we are also in the process of building up capabilities in the food process engineering space. We are building up the corresponding infrastructure in supporting this kind of work as well. So in last week's Rethink Agri-Food Innovation Summit, we announced a partnership with Temasek Holdings to explore a food tech innovation center in Singapore. More details will be provided at a later stage on this partnership. And this is one of the many pieces of activities surrounding the food process engineering space within Sufei. And I'll be very happy to share more with you separately on other things that we are working on within this domain. Next. So just very briefly, right, this is how Sufei can support you in a typical project, right? Using an example on developing a microbial single-cell protein product. We can work with you across the value chain, harnessing capabilities across Sufei, across natural product library, our strain, looking at strain selection, feedstock selection, microbial fermentation, and optimization of it as well. We also look at safety aspect of novel food products, as well as the nutrition properties of it. And not only that, we can also support companies in terms of texturization and formulation, as well as productization for Asian consumers. Next. So all in all, I think we are building a very vibrant, I would say, ecosystem. And with this, I think we are positioning SIFB to support this fast-growing food and biotech ecosystem in Singapore. And I think if there are opportunities that we can collaborate, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk to you about them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tai, for explaining more about what A-Star does. While we wait for maybe 1 or 2 more questions to come in, you mentioned earlier that around 1,000 licenses have been approved over time since the founding of A-Star. Can you explain a little bit how the process of licensing works and what you can do in that sense? And is that something that maybe also the Dutch food technology companies can leverage on?
Sure. So just to clarify, the data is actually within a 4-year timeline. It's from 2016 to 2019. So we track our KPIs every 5 years. So that's a 5-year, I would say, number. So when we talk about 1,000 licenses, these could be IPs that's created internally through internal projects in A-Star, or these could be IPs that's created with collaboration with industry partners as well. Right. I think we are very open in terms of how we collaborate and how we look at licensing IPs to industry. I think at the end of the day, we are looking at how that particular licensing deal can actually bring value to not only the company, but also bring value to Singapore as a whole. So I think this is how we usually access the deal. There could be possibility of having an exclusive license to the industry partner. But if it's a platform technology, something that we feel can be applied more broadly to other companies or other industry sectors, this kind of technology we typically will provide a non-exclusive license. So I will say there's no fixed way of doing it. I think we take a case-to-base basis on accessing how we provide that license to companies.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Obviously, if there's some certain technologies that companies are interested in, they can always reach out to us and we can talk about potential licensing deal.
Okay. Thank you very much. For the Dutch startups, there's going to be quite a few colleagues of Mr. Tai also during the business speed dating. So if you have other detailed questions, you can also do that in one-on-one conversations with them. I don't see any other questions right now. So Mr. Tai, thank you very much for explaining more about A-Star and about the work that you do. Before we go to the next speaker, I have a little poll again, as before. The question is, food giants like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and Nestle are so powerful, the government needs to protect food tech startups from them. And in the meantime, Mr. Johnny Yeung, you can start sharing your screen if you like. And also for the Dutch food tech startups, so Eugene, you saw him speak on 12th of November as well. And Mr. Tai just mentioned him in his presentation that A-Star is working together with Sufei's Bionutrients. So Eugene is going to be there also later at 5 o'clock to talk more with you and share more about his experience here in Singapore. Let me see, it's quite even. So the government should support them at least the first year, so it says 40%, but no startups have to survive using their own strength. I wouldn't say 50-50, but there's very opposite opinions on this apparently. I'm not going to disclose what my opinion is. You can ask me some other time. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Johnny Yeung. He's a scientist for the Singapore Food Agency. This organization is a little bit comparable with what we call the NVWA in the Netherlands. It keeps track of all food regulations and the health and safety of food. Mr. Yeung, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, the organizers, for piecing together this session and inviting us to present. So let me first share our regulations for innovative food technologies. Sorry, it's taking some time to go to the next slide. Yes. So for the benefit of participants who are based outside of Singapore, as most participants are today, I'll first like to introduce the Singapore Food Agency, or in short, SFA. So the Singapore Food Agency was formed on 1st of April 2019 with the mission to ensure and secure a supply of safe food. And in our formation, we have combined all food-related resources and capabilities into a single agency. And by having oversight over the entire food supply chain from farm to fork, we are able to strengthen Singapore's food safety and supply. Singapore is a small city-state with limited resources, as many of us will know, with a population size of only about 5.6 billion and a land size of around 700 square kilometers. And of these, less than 1% is used for agricultural purposes. Due to our constraints, we import many goods and most of our food from overseas. So where does our food come from? We find that more than 90% of our food currently is imported from over 170 countries and regions. And you might have noticed that we do import from the Netherlands as well, for food such as pork, vegetables, and milk. Oops. So to ensure that Singapore has a supply of safe food, SFA has developed the Singapore Food Story, which comprises 3 strategies termed 3 food baskets. Our first food basket is to diversify import sources. And with so many competing users of land in Singapore, we rely heavily on food imports, as I've shared earlier. And therefore, we must diversify our sources to ensure that our food supply is resilient to global food supply fluctuations. And COVID-19 has also shown us that our global food supply chain is really vulnerable, and we need to be prepared for any disruptions in the future. The second basket is growing locally, or what we term as local production. We want to build local capabilities to produce more food for Singapore, and I'll elaborate more on our 30-30 goal, as our colleagues from Assays have also done subsequently. But the idea is that given our land scarce situation, we envision that a lot of science and technology will be required to drive productivity along this strategy. Our third food basket is growing food overseas, and we are supporting homegrown companies to make headway overseas, where they are able to overcome manpower and land constraints, and therefore bring down costs and reduce the price of food exported back to Singapore. Our aim for growing locally is to develop a capability and capacity to produce 30% of our nutritional needs by 2030, as our colleagues on Assays shared our 30-by-30 goal. So why do we want to do this? Because local production can only buffer the impact of overseas food supply disruptions and mitigate the impact of climate change, and allow us to try to close the production loop in the long run. And maybe I'll give a bit more details on how the 30-by-30 works. So we actually use the Healthy Plate that's published by Singapore's Health Promotion Board in order to communicate this goal. And we find that it is quite easy to use this for the public to understand this goal, and that it also offers better flexibility for the industry. And of note for the audience today will be the protein group. So food, fish, eggs, and alternative proteins can all contribute to the protein group as shown in the slide here. We do see that 30-by-30 is an ambitious goal, as we currently produce less than 10%, and less than 1% of the land in Singapore is designated for agricultural use. But we are confident that we'll be able to achieve it. So how are we exactly going to reach this goal? And we see that technology will be the key enabler. And we develop a comprehensive research and development program. And the Singapore government is committed to implement this, having allocated 144 million Singapore dollars for it. And the R&D program will cover 3 themes, as you can see here. So first, in sustainable urban food production, we hope to increase the productivity and lower the resources needed through advancements in genetics, nutrition, and disease and health management. Secondly, advanced biotech-based protein production will help us to develop novel biotech-based food production methods, including research in alternative proteins, as many of the audience are doing, such as microbial proteins and cell-based cultured meat. Thirdly, food safety science and innovation will cover research areas that address emerging challenges in food safety in support of the first two themes. And collectively, this will help us achieve Singapore's 30 by 30 goal through increasing food productivity, developing techniques for alternative protein production, and enhancing the food safety capabilities within Singapore's ecosystem. Allow me to take this chance to share our principle of ensuring food safety. Singapore Food Agency believes that food safety is a joint responsibility between the government, industry, and consumers. While the government can put in place a comprehensive food safety system, the industry and consumers must also play their part. The industry can adopt food safety assurance and enhance its food safety competency through, for example, adopting food safety management systems to give the consumers the assurance that the food that's available to them is safe. Consumers can equally play their part by being aware of food safety risks and taking the necessary precautions to keep food safe for families and themselves. Nevertheless, we do have regulations to provide for food safety in Singapore, and it will be useful for companies to be acquainted with the pieces of legislation that do so. So there are 5 main acts in Singapore that provide for food safety from farm to fork. These are the Sale of Food Act, the Animals and Birds Act, Control of Plants Act, Wholesome Meat and Fish Act, and the Environmental Public Health Act. So the Sale of Food Act covers the safety of food products made available for sale in Singapore, while the other 4 acts covers food-related activities and premises, which can include food trading, manufacturing, processing, and slaughtering. And for the companies here today, the most applicable legislation would definitely be the Sale of Food Act and the food regulations that fall under it. We actually do have a soft copy of these regulations that can be found on our SFA website. And you can access the document by following this link over here. So you'll be able to find the food regulations as well and other related guidance documents in this website. So to ensure food safety, food imported and or produced, manufactured for sale in Singapore must comply with the chemical, microbiological, and labeling requirements specified under the food regulations. And in brief, the food regulations will cover chemical requirements, such as permitted food additives, maximum allowed levels of contaminants, etc., as well as microbiological requirements and standards for ready-to-eat food, as well as labeling requirements and the use of claims in food products. Let us quickly run through some of these requirements in turn. So first, for chemical requirements on food additives. So just to make sure we're on the same page, food additives are chemicals that we intentionally add to foods to serve specific technological functions. And some examples are preservatives, colorings, emulsifiers, stabilizers. So in Singapore, only additives that are listed in the food regulations may be used in food. And the additives used in food must comply with specifications as recommended by the joint FAO and WHO Committee on Food Additives. And some of you may be aware, known as JECFA. And this is a body of scientific experts who evaluate the safety of food additives. In the absence of JECFA specifications, the specifications and purity criteria recommended by other international bodies such as the British Pharmacopoeia, European Pharmacopoeia, and Food Chemical Codex will also be considered. And we have a list of permitted food additives, and we have compiled them into a food additive search function that's available on the SFA website as well. So let me just share how you can access this online copy. So on the SFA website, we've actually sorted these food additives by their INNS number and added an E number where applicable. So this is a resource that helps the industry who may not be able to navigate the food regulations easily. And it's also available as a searchable database. So if you key in the INS number or the additive name, you should be able to find the relevant regulations under our food regulations, which provides for its use. As well as you'll be able to find more information on these food additives, including a process to apply for the use of them, as published in the guidance document for food additives, which are available in the links as you see in the slide. So let me move on to contaminants. So these contaminants are present in or on the food that we eat because of the way food is grown, harvested, processed, packed, or transported. So in order to safeguard consumer health, maximum limits have been stipulated for various contaminants. And it's of noteworthy that no detectable antibiotic residues or degradation products are permitted in food for human consumption. So again, these regulations can help the companies better understand the requirements. And we have compiled a summary document that can be downloaded from the SFA website using the link as shown in the slide here. For microbiological requirements for ready-to-eat foods, limits are currently specified for the organism listed as you can see here. And all other pathogens should not be allowed, should not be present in ready-to-eat foods. And you can find further details in regulation number 35 and the 11th schedule of the food regulations. And let me now jump to labeling requirements. So there are 5 elements in the general labeling requirements for prepacked foods for sale in Singapore. First, the label needs to state the name of the product or description that's adequate to reflect the true nature of the food. This is important so that consumers know what they're actually buying and eating. Secondly, the statement of ingredients needs to be present on the label so that consumers know what is present in the product that they're purchasing. And the statement of ingredients is a list of all the ingredients and additives used in the product, and it should be declared in descending order by the proportion of weight in which they are present. Breakdown components of compound ingredients and presence of allergens should also be declared appropriately. Thirdly, the label should state the net quantity of the product so that consumers will know how much of the product they're actually getting. Fourth, we also need to know the country of origin, which is the last place in which the product is being processed. And last but not least, the prepacked food must also be labeled with the name and address of the local business entity so as to ensure traceability. Besides these general labeling requirements, companies may also wish to note that Singapore has requirements in place for nutrition and health claims. And in order for companies to make such claims, they must be supported by sound and sufficient scientific evidence. So further tools and resources of food labeling are actually available in the links as you can see over here. And you should be able to access these links once the slides are circulated. Before I end, note that many companies here today are stakeholders in the alternative protein and novel food landscape. So allow me to take this chance to share where SFA is currently at on the topic of novel foods, which might be of interest to many of us here. So SFA's approach to novel foods is based on whether these foods have a history of use for human consumption. And by history of use, we take it to mean a period of 20 years. And in addition, we have also included foods that are chemically identical to naturally occurring substances, but produced through advances in technology. By applying this thinking to alternative proteins, we find that some alternative proteins are regarded as novel foods. For example, when we consider, say, like cultured meat or seafood, or products obtained from acellular agriculture, or even some species of algae and plants, we find that these may be novel based on the criteria that we have set. At the same time, there are alternative proteins that are unlikely to be novel foods, such as proteins derived from plants that have been used for culinary purposes for a long time, or even conventional food ingredients that's produced via 3D printing, because we see that the identity of such ingredients remain the same whether or not you produce conventionally or through new technologies such as 3D printing. And if the product that you are developing classifies as a novel food, you'll need to submit a safety assessment for review as part of our pre-market safety assessment process. That being said, SFA recognizes that different companies are often doing really different things, especially in the area of cultured meat, and therefore we encourage companies to consult us early, even when they're still at an early stage of their product development process. We hope that this will help to build trust and understanding and facilitate regulatory processes when your company is ready to submit their safety assessment for review. Meanwhile, SFA has published a guidance document on the information required, which builds on existing documents such as FDA's Red Book or EFSA's guidance documents. And this document contains a broad guidance for the different classes of novel foods, and companies might find it to be a helpful resource when considering the safety of their products. And you can access the document online either through a QR code or the link here. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you, and we welcome any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yeung. Let me check. I don't have questions coming in yet. I have a few questions on behalf of the audience that hopefully you can help on. So you mentioned that a lot of the regulation in Singapore is coordinated with institutes like WHO and international bodies. Does that generalizing mean that for a lot of European companies bringing their products to Singapore, usually it should be fairly easy, or are there some areas that you are aware of that are very, very different in terms of regulation that they need to keep in mind?
I think if companies submit their safety assessment based on what has been published by the agencies that you have mentioned, we will consider them. And I think Teng might be able to add if there are any specific parts of our food regulations.
Thanks, Johnny. And that's a great start, because a lot of our requirements are actually taking reference from international food standards, such as those set by the Codex Alimentarius. So from that respect, probably we should not be too different. But however, there are, of course, in certain circumstances where some of our requirements may be different from international food standards, particularly if our safety assessments or risk assessments create a necessity for that. Yeah. So generally, we do take reference, and that's what we were trying to say.
Okay, thank you. I have another question that just came in from, oh, now it skips up. From Eric Peterson. His question is, insect protein is a long-time traditional food in some cultures. Is it considered a novel food in Singapore? And I assume he means that regulatory-wise.
Right. Okay, that's a great question as well. Right. So we have done a review on insects. We do take note that certain insect species like crickets and grasshoppers have been traditionally consumed in some countries. So from that respect, some species of insects that have a long history of safe use are not considered to be novel foods. But having said that, we are currently working out on some of the procedures for import requirements, as well as local farming requirements for these kind of insects that have a long history of safe use and are not actually novel foods. So some of the important requirements will be looking into things like what are the substrates that these insects are fed on, how are their raising conditions, what are the hygiene requirements, and what kind of other food safety measures that have been put in place to ensure safety and traceability, right? So this is an area we are looking at.
Okay, thank you, very clear. One more question that came in directed at Mr. Yeung, but I think both of you are welcome to answer. In one of the slides, Mr. Yeung says they support companies to produce abroad and then bring the product back to Singapore. Is there a special focus on countries or regions in the world where to produce these products? And what kind of products are the focus?
Right. I think that is one of the strategies or one of our food baskets that we are still working out on. And there are not too many details on them right now. But I think the broad concept is that we, as part of our Singapore food story, I think we are looking into capabilities to grow locally. But we also don't think that the new science and technologies that we develop have to be constrained to be within Singapore only. So I think for Singapore, we can play our part as a global citizen and share the technologies overseas. I think that is part of the idea for us in terms of growing overseas.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm gonna use the time for one more questions. Now all of a sudden a lot of questions are coming in. This question comes from Wouter Muis from Grow Together. If a burger, for example, is made purely of oyster mushrooms, onion and spices, so real regular foods, then I assume this is not a novel food. Is that correct?
Yes, this is a very interestingly worded question, because I would think novel food is also real food. But yes, in any case, yes, if a burger is just made of ingredients that have a long history of culinary use in food, it will be just any other food. Like any other country, we have requirements for food that is imported and sold in Singapore. So Johnny has gone through some of these requirements, and the import procedures for processed foods are also available on our website to review.
Okay. Thank you very much, both of you, Mr. Yeung and Mr. Low, for your time. I think, at least for me, it was very educational. I didn't know much about the regulations in Singapore, even though I eat there every day. For the Dutch companies, you've seen a lot of the URLs. If you missed them, just let us know. We'll make sure to forward them to you. With that, I like to continue to the last speaker for today, which will be Mr. David Tay. So if you can start sharing your screen and setting up, then in the meantime, I have one more poll to share with everybody. And the question is, I trust new foods more. You can decide yourself what you consider to be new foods. This wasn't meant legally or in any way scientifically, this question, but your general opinion based on the companies that are participating in this mission, do you trust new foods more or not? Okay, interesting. So the general opinion, at least here in the audience, is yes, we trust new foods more, but they still have to be kept to the same regulations as everybody else, with a few exceptions that are a little bit more skeptical about the sustainability stories. So with that, I'd like to go to the final speaker of this public event, which is Mr. David Tay. He is representing SG Innovate, which in the Netherlands could be compared with what we call Tech Leap. He's Deputy Director at SG Innovate, and he's going to explain us more about what SG Innovate does, specifically also in the food tech sector. Mr. Tay, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Robin. Good morning, everyone. I'm David, Deputy Director at SG Innovate. So agri-food tech is one of the key areas of investments that we look at, and I have the privilege to be part of the team that's looking after our investments and portfolio in this exciting sector. So first and foremost, I would like to thank our friends at the Netherlands Embassy in Singapore and the Startup Buddy for involving us for this digital food tech mission. It has been our absolute pleasure listening to the pitches by the companies earlier last week and getting to know more about the vibrant agri-food tech ecosystem in the Netherlands. So before I share some of our perspective in the agri-food tech sector, allow me to do a quick introduction about SG Innovate. So SG Innovate is an early stage tech VC that is fully owned by the Singapore government. As an investor, we invest and help entrepreneur scientists find their path to success by supporting them on matters such as hiring talent, securing initial customers, and raising additional capital when needed. As a venture builder, we partner with entrepreneur scientists who have the ambition, passion, expertise to develop and build deep tech solutions for challenging global problems. As part of our community development efforts, we bring together talent and great minds in the ecosystem to discuss, share, and inspire ideas of innovation within deep tech. And as part of our talent development efforts, we build deep tech capabilities through world-class learning opportunities and match top talent with high potential deep tech startups. As you can see, we play multiple roles in this ecosystem, from investor, venture builder, community, and talent builder. So as an investor based in Singapore, let me briefly share some of the opportunities we see and the perspective we have for the agri-food tech sector. Singapore has a huge challenge. As a city-state that has a dense urban population with less than 1% of our land dedicated to agriculture, we have quite a substantial problems when it comes to issues of food security and self-sufficiency. In the recent years, Singapore has sought to revive our agriculture ambitions, with less than 10% of our current food supply produced locally, We are targeting to increase these to 30% by 2030, as shared by our colleagues at SFA as well. So aiming to be one of Asia's urban agri-food tech hub, Singapore is driving substantial investments and intensive R&D into the agri-food tech sector, alongside a progressive regulatory frameworks that make it a lot easier for early stage companies and startups to establish their presence in Singapore. Well, in addition to private sector investments, the Singapore government plays a very active role in providing infrastructure, regulatory framework, and the education required to stimulate and attract investments into agri-tech. Through the RIE 2020 plan, Singapore has set aside more than 100 million to ramp up R&D innovation efforts in agri-food industry. Under Startup SG equity schemes, SITS Capital, which is part of Enterprise Singapore, works with 7 other co-investment partners. They are looking to invest more than $65 million to catalyze Singapore-based agri-food technology startups. Temasek is also an active investor in areas such as urban farming and alternative proteins. So just yesterday, Temasek has announced a new vehicle that will help global agri-food portfolio companies build operation capabilities needed to have their products off the drawing board into the market. For us, we play our tiny little part by investing. We invest in early stage seed to Series B companies in the agri-food tech sector that is based not only in Singapore, but globally as well. Our typical ticket size that we're looking at ranges from $500K US dollars to $2 to $5 million US dollars, depending on where the deals are based at. So very similar to our friends in other VC funds, we look at the sector from an upstream to a downstream perspective. The upstream being closer to the farmers that we work with, midstream being the logistical movement and post-harvest processing, and downstream being closer to consumers that we do on our daily lives. Some of the investment areas of key focus for us includes agri-biotech, next generation food and drinks, food safety, food processing, supply chain and logistics. Some of our investments that we have announced publicly include Demoto, AI Palette, and some of them have not been announced yet. These areas are relatively nascent in terms of technology development, and some of them are just getting more investors' interest recently. All of these areas, we believe, leverages on certain opportunities which Singapore and Southeast Asia offer in terms of technology advancements, market opportunities, and investors' interest. Having said that, there are still many areas that are of huge importance to Singapore and are well received by other investors that we have. So for instance, as mentioned earlier, Temasek spends quite a fair bit of time investing in novel ingredients, especially in the alternative protein space. Vertical farming is also an area of excitement to them, which they spend quite a lot of their investment capital on as well. So before I end this quick presentation, I would like to do a quick shout out to our community team who has put together some slides to allow us to share a bit about the events and activities that we hold at Innovate. So today we have more than 2,600 friends in the agri and food tech community, and they are quite equally distributed between corporates, researchers, startups, and other individuals who are excited about the space. On the extreme right of the slides, you can see the list of events that we have done in July and November, all the way to November, having one right tomorrow in terms of how we can extend shelf life of food. These events allow us to build the network of individuals that we work with closely in this ecosystem, and we hope the same ecosystem can be leveraged by yourself if you're looking to have some form of presence in Singapore. We are also thankful to have many notable speakers who have leading cutting-edge research in universities, founding new companies and driving innovations at big corporates as part of our network. Well, last but not least, I strongly recommend keeping a lookout for the Digital Feed interview series, which will go in depth on certain insights and topics for the agri-food tech sector. There's definitely going to be more in depth than my 15 minutes presentation today. And well, at this point of time, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have regarding investments, opportunities in Singapore, or just in general market opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tok, for the final presentation for today. First of all, for all the Dutch startups, maybe a very obvious question, but I assume that most of your events at the moment are online as well, right?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure, because I can really recommend the events. I've been a lot to your building here in Singapore when that was still a normal thing to do. So for all the Dutch startups, make sure to join those. In terms of the investments that you have done recently, is there one or two that you can share in particular why you invested in those and what made them so interesting from a Singapore perspective?
Okay, so I think the most recent investments that have been announced would be Dimoto. It is supply chain and logistics for agri-food products. I think what it does is it leverages on blockchain to allow provenance of these products to be seen. At the same time, where you know exactly where these products are from and where the food products are going, you can have a perspective of gathering data that will be important and useful when it comes to, for example, trade financing and leveraging on new business models that's maybe exciting for the food and agri-tech space. So for us, we look at areas where Singapore has already an active role in. For example, 20% of the agri-food business trade goes through Singapore to begin with. And if we were able to have a better insight from a data perspective, from what's coming in, what's going out, I think it will allow us to have new revenue models and new business models that are running and built on such data.
Okay, very clear. And you mentioned you're working a lot with the other organizations, some of them who were speaking today as well, like A-Star. Is there is it best beneficial for a company that has gone through a platform, through an organization like that to get investment from SG Innovate, or is it judged purely case by case?
Well, so it's really dependent on the investment opportunity we have at hand. We have invested in overseas-based companies who are interested and excited about some of the technical capabilities which A-Star have. And through that, there is, of course, then there's joint development in terms of agreement when it comes to technology co-research. This helps us because at the end of the day, as an investor, we want to be in a situation that we can provide good value at the companies that we are investing in. If they were to be working with A-Star in some form of the R&D, and we are able to provide them capital to help them to scale in this region and this part of the world, that's something that we'll be very happy to do. I think it's not a must that you have to get investments to work with A-Star. I think A-Star is very open to working with global companies around the world. So I think but on the other hand, I think if you have something ongoing with A-Star and Singapore becomes an exciting market for you, and the Southeast Asia is a place that you would like to target, please feel free to let us know. We'll be happy to consider looking at an investment opportunity as well.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time and your talk. For the Dutch companies, like I said, SG Innovate can be compared, I think, with TechLeap. I actually know more by now about SG Innovate than about TechLeap because I've been here for 5 years. But if you are looking to raise, look at the website and research more about how they can help, how to collaborate, and how to reach out to them. They're a really strong partner here in Singapore to work with. And with that, we've come to the end of today in terms of the different speakers that we had. I do have a few things that I want to mention before everybody else should go to the business partner dating. So some of you have registered throughout this event this afternoon. As you probably noticed, I wasn't able to do everything at the same time, and I was focusing on facilitating here first. So you haven't heard back from me yet. If you registered just now, please keep an eye on your mailbox for about the next half hour. I won't be able to help you to join the first round of the business partner speed dating, but we'll check your profile, see if there's a match with the Dutch startups. And if there is, you will, as soon as I can, get an email in your inbox and an invite to the air meet where we will be doing the business partner speed dating. Then I really like to thank again the people who made today possible. First of all, Sabine and Gabi, thank you very much for helping us put this all together in the past couple of weeks. We're almost at the end of it, so I'm a little bit sad about that. I want to say that now because now we have most people on the call. And of course, my team, they actually don't know it that I'm thanking them because they're already setting up the other meeting for you. But Sakshi has been working really, really hard to put this all together, and she made a very cool logo, or at least we thought it was very cool with the egg. Then on the November 12th, we also had IPI as a speaker, and they asked us if we could point out that they have an event coming up on December 7 to 11 called Tech Innovation. It's a conference which you can follow entirely online. I think it's going to be very extensive with a lot of different speakers, also about food tech. So if you think that is an area that you want to know more about, especially here in Singapore, and that you want to follow their event, go to this website, www.techinnovation.com.sg, to find out more and register. Then we have our regular events, and actually we have our own regular event coming Thursday again. If you happen to be any kind of entrepreneur, so you don't have to be in food tech. As a company, the Startup Body doesn't specialize in food tech. We help all startups and all entrepreneurs that are building new companies from scratch and that need to raise funding. So we have our investor speed dating again this Thursday at 5 o'clock Singapore time. We typically have investors from all around the world. We already have confirmed investors from Europe, Indonesia, and Singapore for this Thursday. If you're interested in joining that, go to our website and make sure to register for that. And finally, a little bit of a plug for us, but we've been nominated for the Pitch Deck Asia Best Accelerator Program. And if you liked today and you want to support us in winning that competition, please scan the QR code that you currently see on the right side. Log in and vote for the Startup Buddy and help us win. Last year, we ended up being number 9 out of 253. So it would be great if we can get higher up. Last time I looked, we were at number 4. That's And with that, I really want to thank all of you. I'm unmuted, right? Okay, if anybody has a question, please put it on the somewhere else than what I'm getting right now. I don't see anything on the chat. So thank you everybody for joining the second day of the Digital Food Tech Mission 2020. On behalf of the Dutch Embassy in Singapore, all the Dutch food tech companies in the Netherlands that have been joining this mission, thank you very much for supporting us and by attending. Some of you I'll see again in 8 minutes on AirMeet. And with that, we're going to close off this session for today. Thank you very much.